Let's just continue in the spirit of what's been happening right in this auditorium. God's been doing something. God is doing something. God's been saying something. And I believe let's just continue so we can dive in and respond to what God is doing. Hallelujah. 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 You know this, I was going to continue where I left off last Sunday. I'm kind of going to do that, but before I do that, the Lord put this in my heart last night. Something very serious, I would say. And the Lord put in my heart is, in this time and in this age, there is a battle for the soul of Christianity, or the heart of Christianity. There is a battle to what it means to be a Christian today. There is a battle. And God is raising up. Remember, over the months we've heard that God is raising up an army. An army is not raised to sit and watch. Can we agree? The whole word army is a military word, right? It's a military word, which means there is a battle. We've heard this several times. We've even from Ezekiel, where Ezekiel prophesies over dry bones, and he says there rose up a great army. You know, he prophesied, and there was a strong wind that came from the four corners, and the dry bones became alive. That's what the scripture says. The dry bones became alive. And I believe in this season, the Lord is making dry bones to come alive, but for a purpose, to restore the heart and soul of what a Christian is supposed to be. Because the heart and soul of Christianity has gone. It has changed. It has changed. And there is a battle on. And that's why I believe what Josiah shared. There is a sifting. There is a sifting. Man, this is serious. Come on, church. What I'm trying to say is, listen, our casual Christianity will not work anymore. Our casual Christianity will not work. I'm not pointing fingers. I'm not hinting, so don't ever think that there is hinting. I'm not hinting. I'm speaking to myself. You see, the word of God is the sword of the Spirit, and it cuts two ways. As I speak, it cuts my own heart. And this is, I believe, a serious time. Hence why the Lord gave me this message 2 months ago. Bring the church, build the church that I am building. Build the church that I am building. Because our concepts of church has failed. Our concept of church has not worked. In fact, he was showing me two things. One of the things he says, listen, he says, I am bringing those who have left the church, I'm bringing them back. And that's exciting. Isn't that exciting? That's exciting. He said, those who left either offended or upset or for whatever reason they left, he says, I'm bringing them back. I'm bringing people back to my church. But with that, he said, the church has to look different. Otherwise, you're just bringing them back to the same toxic church that they left in the first place. The church has to be different. So the good news is God is bringing people back. I'm hearing several people coming back, not just our church. It's happening in here, this church. I've been talking to a few people who shared this similar story and said, yes, I was in the church, I left, but God is calling me. But this time when you come back, it's different. It's going to be different. It's going to be so much more meaningful. I was speaking to a person I know who said there was even that he was met by a pastor's kid who had walked away, who came back and said, I don't know, God is calling me back. God is calling me. There's something new happening. There's something new happening. So that is the exciting part. At the same time, there's a scary part happening. And this is the scary part. The scary part is the Lord is saying there's going to be a great falling away. 2 Timothy 3, 1-6 says, you should know this, Timothy, that in the last days there will be very difficult times. For people will love only themselves and their money. So people will love only themselves and their money. They will be boastful and proud, scoffing at God, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful. They will consider nothing sacred. They will be unloving, unforgiving. They will slander. They have no self-control. They will be cruel and hate what is good. They will betray their friends, be reckless, be puffed up with pride, and love pleasure rather than God. But they will still act religious. That's the scary part, isn't it? They will act religious. You see, they pushed God out, but they still have a form of religiosity. They will reject the power that could make them godly. Stay away from such people. Stay away from such people. We are living in a time where God is saying, my church, fight for the soul of the church. Fight for the soul of the church. Because there is a battle. In fact, Jesus says this in Matthew 24. Verse 4, Jesus told them, don't let anyone mislead you. Many will come in my name claiming I am the Messiah. They will deceive many. You will hear of wars and threats of wars, but don't panic. Yes, these things must take place, but the end won't follow immediately. Nations will go out to war against nations, kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in many parts of the world, but all this is only the first of the birth pains, with more to come. Then you will be arrested, persecuted, and killed. You will be hated all over the world because you are my followers. And this is what Jesus says. Nations will go to war. You will be hated over the world because you are my followers. Many will turn away from me. There is a sifting. God wants all to be saved. He says it is desire that none should perish, that all come to the knowledge of Christ, believer and unbeliever. But he says many will turn away from me, betray and hate each other. Many false prophets will appear and will deceive many people. Sin will be rampant everywhere. And listen to this, the love of many will grow cold, but the one who endures to the end will be saved. And the good news about the kingdom will be preached through the whole world. See, what I love, Jesus is saying, listen, in the last days, these things, these terrible things are going to happen. But I want you to catch right at the end. He said, irrespective of what is going to happen, the good news will still be preached. And I believe he is raising up an army that would give the good news no matter where they are. The Lord is saying, restore. The soul of the church is at stake. And he's looking for people who will rise up and say, no, we're going back to original Christianity. We're taking the church back to its origins. Would you do that? Would you do that? See, we've been looking at building a church that Jesus builds, and in that we've said the church that Jesus builds will make his great commission their great mission. What was Jesus' great commission? Jesus' great commission is this. Listen, Matthew 28, 18 to 20. Jesus came and told his disciples, I have been given all authority. All authority in heaven and on earth. I kind of touched on this last Sunday, but perhaps you don't remember. Today is a good day to remember. He says, I have been given all authority in heaven and earth. And the very thing Pastor Prasad was talking about is his name that is above everything else. This is what he's saying. I have authority. I have a name that is above everything else. Right? I have a name that has authority over everything in heaven and on earth. Therefore, remember last week, the therefore. Because I have all authority in heaven and earth. Because I have my people. I'm telling you, this is what he's saying. Therefore, my people, go, make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Teach these new disciples to obey what? To obey what? To obey? Come on, church. It's there. It's right in front of you. All the commandments I have given you. And be sure of this. Oh, don't you love that? And be sure of this. Be sure of this. Can we say that? Be sure of this. How many of you are sure of this? Are you sure of this? Yes. Be sure of this. And what is that? I am with you always, even to the end of the age. Come on. He didn't tell us to go and make disciples and do all these things on our own. He said, firstly, all authority is mine. That is why you can go and do this. And secondly, you're never alone. I am with you. But let me ask you this question, church. How many of us are surviving? What is your Christianity today? How many of us are surviving Christians? What are you doing? We're surviving. You're just getting through. Getting by. So we don't know what you're talking about, this discipleship and all this. You don't know the problems we have. We are just surrounded by difficulties. We live, wake up in the morning to survive. Is that the Christianity Jesus spoke about? Well, he didn't say we won't have problems. We all have problems. He never said, you won't have problems. Follow me and you won't have problems. He never said that. He said, yes. He said, I have overcome. Don't worry. Because I overcame, you can overcome. Hang out with me and I'll take you through your problems. That's what he said. But this is what he's saying. I'm with you to the end of the age. We have to change this survival mentality. As a church, majority of Christians today are just trying to survive. Oh, survive. Can't do anything else because I'm trying to survive. That has to change. Because he said, all authority in heaven and earth is mine. It's like I was sharing before communion. We are covenant people of God. Let us restore identity of who we are. We have to restore identity. See, Jesus says in John 14:23-24, if anyone loves me, he will obey my teachings. My Father will love him and he will come to me and we will make our home with him. He who does not love me will not obey my teachings. How many of us are obeying what he said? Don't lift your hand up for that, okay? It would be quite embarrassing if you did. How many of you are truly saying, I obey all his teachings? No, we don't. What's the problem? What's the problem? Remember last week I spoke about some of the issues we have as disciples or trying to be disciples. Why? Because this word is scary. The word disciple is scary because when you think of a disciple, you think you have to give up your job, you have to give up everything else and then follow him because that's the example we see in the Bible. Correct? So we're a little scared of that word. It's like he gave a great commission, but I don't know. I have a family, I have children, I have a husband, I have a wife, I have so many things that I need to do. I have this job. I don't, discipleship is, I don't know. I don't know what Jesus was thinking of. Maybe it was just for the old, for that time and you know that finished. It doesn't go. No, that's his great commission. That's his great commission. We looked at changing a mindset. You know, I had a testimony this morning. Suren shared a testimony about Davina. Where is she? She's also downstairs at Sunday school. Okay. And he said an interesting thing. He said how he was on survival mode. And I said, morning we have a 7:30 service. So at that service, Suren was leading worship. And he was talking about how he was going through life in the last so many months on survival mode. You know, they got this viral flu. They were feeling, really off. And just after that, Davina got dengue. And she was pretty serious. She was bleeding internally. Her platelets were coming down. She was in hospital for a long time. And he said, basically, I came to a point of, I'm angry, I'm annoyed, I'm frustrated, and I don't want to hear anything about what I need to do. Anyone feel like that before? Don't leave me hanging. Thank you. Am I the only one? I'm actually lifting because I felt like that before. I felt like that many times. Saying, Lord, just people don't talk to me. Sometimes you just want to wallow. You want to wallow a little. Right? And just don't feel I can't do this. And then he said, Davina was called to give a testimony that evening. It was at the evening service. They were on the way to the evening service. At the evening service, Davina gave a testimony. And she spoke about what God was doing in her life. What God was doing in her life. Here is the person who went through the whole thing. Not him. He was side support. But he's saying the side support was not easy. Fair enough. There were a lot of aspects, from financial aspects to worrying aspects to medical aspects, and a lot of aspects to worry about. But they said one thing happened through that, is that when they were driving home, they realized that, wait a minute, we've just moved away from God. We need to give him some priority again. He needs to get priority again. And in doing so, he says, our perspective has changed. See, can I tell you, if you want to bring your heart back to the Lord, how do you think that happens? If you were convicted by the Holy Spirit this morning and saying, okay, Lord, I'm worried about these things. I have these giants. I know my heart is in some other place. I want to come back. How do you think, as human beings, that we get our heart from a place where it is not? Okay, let's say like Davina and Suren. How do you get our hearts from that place to a place to a better place? How do we do that? Let's be real. What do you think? Anybody has any thoughts? Sorry? Okay, but when you're discouraged and you think like, well, if God is such a big God, why can't he do something? Fair enough the question I'm asking. Is that fair enough to ask? Be real, okay. Anybody, I heard somebody else say something, now you got scared. No, don't know if he'll cancel what I say. No, what I'm saying, I won't cancel what you said. Okay, let me make it easy for sake of time. Right. You see, our hearts are transformed through our life's journey. That's how our hearts are transformed. You see, because I'm a pastor, it doesn't make me a better disciple than you. Please catch this. This is something that the Lord taught me just this couple of weeks ago. Because I'm a pastor, because, he left the working world and now he's come and so holy because he's given his entire time and life to Jesus and full time. 21 years, full time. So he must have more privileges than others. Is that you think the kingdom of God is like that? Unless you read the book, you don't know what it's like. So you believe anything anybody says. Read the book. Read what Jesus says. Can I tell you, me being a pastor, what this is? This is the journey that transforms me to looking more like Jesus. And when I go before him, he's not going to say, Dinesh, pastor, you a pastor, no? How big was the church? How many? You think he's going to say, you were very successful, no? My gosh, you had so many people. Wow, well done. Are you kidding me? That's now. He's going to say, when I stand before him, how much you look like Jesus? I know I made you a pastor because that's the place you're going to look more like Jesus. So your heart can be transformed. You think it's different for you? It's not. Can I tell you your journey, where you are right now, those awful troubles you go through, like I said a few Sundays ago, all that is a part of God changing you to look more like his son. But if you can see that, you won't sit down and be a victim. Like I said, the church is full of victims. Poor me, poor me. No, if we are going to be an army that is going to bring back the heart and soul of what Christianity is, you cannot be a victim. Such people are easy to sift. Jesus said in those last days, the enemy will sift you. He's going to push you aside. There's going to be a divide. And we got a word as Josiah shared what the Lord was saying. I was laughing, sitting there saying, oh, that's my sermon. But I was like, thank you, Lord, for confirming. I thank you for confirmation. And he said, you will be sifted if you sit down wallowing. If you sit down thinking you're a victim, you will not restore the heart of Christianity back in the church. You won't. But then what is required? What is required? He says, if my church is to come, what is required is, are you willing to die to yourself? Somebody say, Pastor, can't you speak those love sermons? They're so much nicer than these dying sermons. You have that very one, that very powerful one you spoke and I cried and all that about the love of God. Preach that. No, church, we have heard that. We know this to be true about the love of God. But it has to change. Bring back the soul of Christianity. What has happened? I believe we have two camps of Christianity. We have one camp that says, come to our church. Come and you can be successful. You can have the privilege of joining this community of millionaires to be. We're not there yet, but that's where we're getting. Because our gospel is about how rich you can get. Our gospel is about how successful you can be. By the way, you all are supposed to jump up and cheer every time I say that. That's how it usually works, right? In those churches, when you say, success, woo! Come on, preach it, pastor. And they pack churches. Mega churches they become. Mega churches. And therefore Christianity then, the soul of Christianity is pride of life, lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes. Come and get your lust sorted out by God. It's all about what you lust after. You come, God will give you. Man, that packs churches. It does. Then you find another group that says a different story. It says, come to church. Because if you don't, you will go to hell. And then the message of the church is, you must be here. You must come. You must be here. Because without you, you must be there to keep this denomination going. Sounds very noble. You must be here. You must come. We must keep this service going. Because we have to keep this going. If you don't come, you're going to hell. What's the similarity? You can see they're quite different, right? But what's the similarity? What are both churches produce? They both don't produce disciples. They don't produce people who are running after Jesus and want to tell others about Jesus. The first one is teaching people to run after a person or a personality or an organization. Jesus is secondary. You come after us. This is where the stuff happens. We are the people. And the other one is fear, 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 fear. They both do not produce disciples. They both do not produce disciples. But then this is what Jesus said. Matthew 16. Oh. If you're tracking with me, you have to read this, Matthew 16:24. And Jesus said, if anyone would want to come after me, he must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. This is, by the way, before he went to the cross. Huh? They all knew what the cross was. Instrument of death. Take up your instrument of death. You deny yourself. Take up an instrument of death and follow me. Now, how many of you really want to follow Jesus? How many of you can say, I am a follower of Jesus because I'm so ready to die, deny myself and die? See, for the soul of Christianity to come back to the church, it takes true followers of Jesus in the church. to restore the soul of Christianity. Otherwise, we have one of these two other churches. One is dying, the other one has a lot of numbers, but both do not have disciples. Both do not have people that look like Jesus. And there's nothing for the world to see. There's nothing for the world to see. Look at the next one, Galatians 2. I like what Paul says. He says, I have been. First, Jesus says you have to basically take your cross and be ready to die. I like Paul. Paul says, I have already been crucified with Christ. I have crucified myself with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And the life I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. See, I can't keep speaking just about love. I have spoken. For years I have spoken to you, be secure in the love of God. And that is, if you are secure in the love of God, you can say, I'm ready to die. I'm ready to deny myself and take up. How many, maybe some of you are embarrassed, but how many of you have, it's okay to lift your hand, no one is judge you. How many of you wear a cross around your neck? If I ask you, why do you wear a cross? People will say, why? To signify, yes, to identify as a Christian. But if you really think about it, what is it resembling? An instrument of death, correct? The cross. I don't know, this came to me, I'd probably get thrown out for saying this, but I believe we all need to wear crosses. Why? I want a cross because when I'm wearing my cross and I go to some place and somebody annoys me and I want to tell them off and I want to beat the living daylights out of them, I'm going to say, wait a minute, I can't do that because I crucified myself. Oh man, I should have never worn this cross. This cross now says that I have denied myself. This cross says I have crucified myself. If you're wearing a cross, wear it for that reason. Let it remind you that you have died to yourself. Let it remind you. Let it remind you what you have done. Let it remind you, I did what Jesus said. Because he said, if you would follow me, he must deny himself, take up the cross, and follow me. Is that something we can do as a church? Is there something you are willing to do going forward? To deny yourself, to take up the cross, and follow Jesus? That is the only way we can bring the heart of Christianity back into the church. The message of Jesus Christ back into the church. It's not through some fancy preaching. It's the people turning to him and saying, Lord, I'm willing to die for you. You remember the days of Aragalaya, not so long ago. Right? Less than a year or roundabout there, no? The big Aragalaya. And I remember during that time, I remember my son went to the part one, the initial part before it went to Golf Fest. It was at Viharamadevi Park. One day everybody met at Viharamadevi Park and he was there. He went for it after work and he came and said, Dada, you won't believe the energy there, the vibe, the energy. Hundreds, thousands of young people. We're all there, everybody like feeling, we want change. Like, come on, something has to change. And he said, there was such an amazing energy. That's the word that you guys use, right? Energy. A vibe. There was amazing energy and vibe. And then when I heard this, and then I met a few other young people in the church, and I saw them, they're ready to go, they want to go to Golf Fest and all that. I was like, wow, these young people are so passionate. And then I did what a pastor does. It's like, why are they not passionate in church for anything? In church, they don't seem to be passionate about much. All I get is excuses. Why is that? Be careful what you ask for when you talk to God. So I asked the Lord, why, Lord? Why is this? And I was praying. And he gave me an answer I didn't want to hear. He said, it's because of you. What? He said, it's you. You are to blame. I said, why am I to blame? Because you haven't given them the cost of following me. You've told them as long as they come and do a little AV here and maybe a little work here and a little, a little bit at the back there and, turn up for a few meetings. You pat them on the back and you hug them and say, oh, you're doing such an awesome job. I'm not trying to say any of that is wrong. But you have failed to show them to follow me is to live and die for me. Out there, the Aragalaya, they have found something to live or die for. That's why they're there. That's why all these young people have come together to say either we will live or we will die for something. When I have a greater plan than an Aragalaya in my kingdom. But you have patted them on the back and said, it's okay. Just turn up. We are so happy to see you. For you, it was more important to have people filling your seats than people who are willing to die for me. Give them a reason to die for me, and you see, they start living for me. Now let me ask you, church, are you willing to die for Jesus? Now can I tell you one thing? I think I have good news. Most of us here will not have to physically die, though the disciples had to in the New Testament. You see, a lot of them died, but that's not what's happening here right now. Right now, we're a bit different. There are nations where people are dying for him, but in Sri Lanka, I don't think God's called us to die for him. But are you still willing to die for him in the sense of, will you die to your lethargy? Will you die to your flesh that says, Lord, I want to hang out with you, but, oh Lord, it's not convenient. No. Are you willing to die so that the purposes of God can be established in his kingdom? Are you willing to die? Are you willing to die to, as he says, there will be lovers of pleasure than anything else, where it's like, oh yeah, I know, but Lord, I really, come on, can I just enjoy this? Are you willing to die? Are you willing to die? Are you willing to die to your mouth that wants to speak negative about people? Are you willing to die to that? I'm telling you, some of us have to die to that because we are so used to talking all the negative things about people behind their backs. It's called gossip. You have to die to that. If you want to be a follower of Jesus, you have to die to it. Don't think that one is committing adultery. I am only gossiping. Much less a sin. No. If you read Galatians, it talks about the lust of the flesh and it talks about all these things. I don't have it right now here with me, the scripture. But it talks about those who practice these things will not inherit the kingdom of heaven. It talks about factions. It talks about gossip. It talks about slander. Saying, you will not inherit the kingdom of heaven. So beloved church, if you want to be the army of Jesus Christ, are you willing to die? Make a choice. I can't make it for you. If you still just want to turn up on a Sunday, hope that I say something that will either make you laugh or some worship that will sing some songs you can still come. I won't have a board out there that says disciples only. Because when Jesus preached, they came. Thousands came. 5,000 men came. They wanted to eat whatever he threw out. But he only had 12 disciples. Lot of people came behind him. He didn't tell them not to come. But he shared his heart only with a few. Because these few will run. Those guys, if I call them to do something else, they'll say, food is finished. Okay, see you next month. And they'll go off. You and I have to make choices. If you want to restore, bring back the heart of Christianity back into the church. I was at a conference some years ago, and there was a pastor from Kenya, and he shared this story with me. He said he was in Uganda, which is bordering Kenya, and he says while he was there, he went they were having a rally, those open rallies, and they were having a gospel rally, speaking about Jesus. He says as they were there in the evening, having these rallies with, several hundreds and close to, several thousands of people who had come for the meeting. Suddenly, the whole place was surrounded by terrorists. Uganda has different factions. A warring faction, I can't remember which was, who was that guy, Charles, somebody who was, anybody remember? Anyway, there's a really bad guy. Okay. And he came, got on the stage, and this pastor was on the stage. He got on the stage. Thank you. The gunman got on the stage and then pointed to the pastor And the organizing pastor, the two of them, held guns and then told the people who were on the stage as well, guns pointed to the people on the stage, to saying, how many of you are willing to die for your religion? There was absolute silence. And he said, there was a very old woman who got up. An old woman got up and said, I'm willing to die for Jesus. Then he said, he stood up. And the pastor who was organizing that meeting, he stood up. And these are guys with guns all over in the grounds down there and then on the stage. And he said there were total about 5 people in over 500 people that said, we're willing to die for Jesus. The gunman looked at them and said, okay, 5 of you stay, rest of you come with us. And took the rest of them into the jungles with them. We don't know what happened to them. You don't know what happened to them. Now, I don't think we're going to be called to that level. But I still think it's good to make a choice. It's good to make a choice. Are you willing to make a choice today? Are you willing to say, Lord, I am willing to die to myself. I'm willing to take up the cross and follow you. That's the choice we need to make. I'm willing to allow you to transform me so I can look more like Jesus. I'm willing to do that. Because I believe that is the kind of people that will restore and show this nation who is in darkness what a real Christian looks like. What a true believer of Jesus looks like. You see, I'm just going to end on this, but it's something again what Josiah said, an interesting thing. See again, what I'm telling you to die for is, listen, the Apostle Paul who said, I'm crucified with Christ, right? He said, if anyone can boast, he says, I can. He says, if anyone can boast, he says, I have every right to boast. Because I come from an amazing family. You don't know. I come from a tribe that is a top-notch tribe. I come from a great family. And you know what? I am so clever. I am a teacher. I am a teacher of teachers. I am a Pharisee of Pharisees, he said. He says, I'm educated. I have everything. I have everything that the rest of the world is clamoring for. He says, but I consider that rubbish. In fact, he says, a pile of compost. Goma. You know, goma. Yeah, that's what it is. I comes with like goma. Young people, do you all know what goma? No, you have no idea what goma is. Oh, when we grew up, we played in fields. And when we played in fields, there were cows and buffaloes. And they would poo. And that poo is goma. Now you all don't play in fields. You all don't encounter buffaloes as much as we did. But that's what Paul says. So I'm saying, listen church, isn't there something wrong with our church when we are running after the very things he calls garbage? If I ask most Christians, what's up with your life? It's these things that are preventing me. Pastor, these things, I need these things. Like Josiah was saying, there's nothing wrong with wanting to be successful. Come on, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong that you want to be educated. There's nothing wrong that you want a good job. There's nothing wrong. But when that becomes your focus, there is something wrong. When that becomes what you put your whole life, your energy, your abilities into that, then there's something wrong. And that's what it means to say, Jesus says, are you willing to die to self? Can I have good news? Jesus is not kattakala karapambang leader. We have that in Sinhala. That you have to suffer. No. He says there will be suffering in this walk. Because that will make you a better person. But it's not his desire to say, no, all of you must suffer. Then you can prove to me how good you are. No, that's how human beings are. If you suffer, then I know that you're a good, faithful servant. No, that is not the kingdom. The kingdom is, you follow me as a child, but in this walk, my son, my daughter, there are going to be problems. Because it's a broken world. It's a sinful world. There is a God of this age called the devil, and he hates you, and he's going to come after you. But don't worry, I'm going to walk with you, and I have all authority in heaven and earth. I have all authority. But that's what he's calling us to. He's calling us to make a decision. I'm sorry, I was going to end with this. Yes, thank you. Is what something Josiah said, if you have to choose, he said, what do you want to be remembered by? He said, I want to be remembered as a person who loved Jesus. Why? So they'll say, what a super fellow he was. No? Now, I used to think the same way. Till this week. Till this week, something changed. Till this week, when I learned something else. I learned something new, which I'm going to share with you. Okay, you can bear with me for a few more minutes, okay? John 14, verse 31. This is where Jesus is talking to his disciples about going to the cross. Right? He's talking about different things, 14, 15, 16, 17. He's talking about going to the cross. He prays for them. He says, and then he says, look at John 14, 31. But I will do what the Father requires of me, so that the world will know that I love the Father. That's what we see Jesus saying, right? I'm going to do everything the Father has called me to do. So the world will know that I love Jesus. Why? So that everybody will say, Jesus was super, nah? He just, what a martyr he was. You think that's what he was? What was Jesus' mission on earth? To reveal the Father, to connect us with the Father. He says, I have glorified you, Lord. On this earth, I have glorified you. His desire, even in everything he did, he says, that's why he said, I only do what I see the Father doing. I don't do I am God. I am the Son of God. I am God. I can do anything. But he says, I don't do things. I only do what I see the Father doing. I will obey the Father. I will do everything I am required. Why? That the world will see that I love the Father. Why? Ask the next question. Why? Why? Because if I go to the cross and I still love the Father, they will say, man, what kind of father is this? That a fellow going to the cross also still loves him. This Father must be magnificent. Can you see the difference? How I love the Lord. But if I show the world that I love the Lord, what are they going to see? They're going to see, oh my gosh, this guy is going through hell, but he won't shut his mouth, but praises his God. This God must be awesome. Yeah? The Bible talks about in those days, there were slaves. Right? And slaves, after a certain period of time in those biblical days, they would be released. After they've served so many years, slaves are released. Right? And what happens is there were sometimes when the slaves are being released, there was some who says, no, we're not going to leave your house. I know I have freedom to go. I know I have freedom to go make money. I have freedom to do this and that and the other. They says, no, but we will not leave you. The slave tells the master, I will never leave you. As long as I live, I'm going to live under this house. They were called bond servants. They're bonded for life. And in fact, their sign in those days is they would go and pierce their ears at the doorpost. Their ears were pierced. And so when people saw such people, say, hey, there goes a bond servant. That fellow is bonded to his master for life. And what do you think? What do you think the people thought? This fellow must be a super slave, right? My gosh, he's such an amazing. Must be amazing. See, that's what we want to hear. No? I want people to say, oh, Dinesh loved Jesus. Wow, Dinesh was such a good guy, man. He was a super guy. He just loved Jesus. No. What I learned is I want to obey Jesus and I want to love Jesus through hell or high water. Not the movie. Why? So they will say, my gosh, through all the problems he went, he still didn't let go of Jesus. He still worshipped Jesus, which means, man, Jesus must be just awesome. I also want to go to know this Father. Do you see the difference? Those bondservants, when they saw them, then he said, what a fabulous bondservant. They were like, oh my gosh, can you imagine the master of the house that this fellow would want to be bonded for life? That master must be something else. Can we do that for Jesus? Can we love him to a level? Can we obey him to a level where people say, my goodness, this God must be something else. Their God must be something else. They're willing to do everything he said. They love him so much. He must be. It doesn't say how great we are, but it talks about how great our God is. And therefore, we can glorify the Father. Would you like to do that? Okay, nobody. Let's take a moment. Let's just close our eyes for a moment. I know I said many things. But my question to you is, would you say, I'm willing to deny myself and take up the cross and follow Jesus? Because just what Jesus said, if you want to follow me, if you want to be a disciple, if you want to follow, I don't want to be a part of the crowd anymore. I'm telling you, church, you can be a part of the crowd. You can be a part of the background props, but they don't get to see or know the Father like the one who says, I'm willing to follow you. The one that says, you are more worthy than anything else. Would you choose today? As Jesus said, you need to choose if you want to follow me. If you're like me, you can say, Pastor, say, Father, I don't even know where to begin. I am so scared that I will just fail you big time. Honestly, Lord. I would love to try, but I don't know, Lord. I don't know. If that's you, that's okay. Say, Lord, I would want to, but would you help me become a true disciple? Would you help me with these areas in my life that I need to die to? Would you help change my values? Because right now, they kind of are in the forefront of my life. Would you come and help me, Lord? Would you help me, Father? Because I want to live in a way where I glorify you. Like Jesus glorified you and showed us what an amazing Father you are. Lord, I want my life to show the world how amazing you are. Not how amazing I am, but how amazing you are. Jesus, you became a bondservant. You became the servant of all. You led by example. Father, help us as a church. We don't want to get caught in the values of what church has become. We don't want to get involved in the politics of what church has become. No, Lord. We want purity. We want the purity back in the church. We want purity. We want holiness back in the church. And Lord, I know it begins with an individual. If that is you, would you just stand where you are? You don't have to do this to impress anybody. Would you just stand and say, Lord, I want you to do something. I want you to do something in my heart this morning. Because I want to be a true disciple. I want to be one who's following you. Following the way you told me to follow you. And Father, would you help us? Would you help us the way you helped those disciples, those misfits, those rejects, who were not worthy to follow a rabbi, but you chose them. You chose these misfits. Would you choose a misfit like me to be a disciple, to be an example of what Jesus is like to a nation in darkness, to a world that needs to see you? I don't even know where to begin. But I begin by saying, here I am. Here I am. As Isaiah said in Isaiah chapter 6, I am a man with unclean hands and unclean lips. Would you take the coals and cleanse us? Would you purify our hearts? Would you call us and set us apart for you? Set us apart. I pray for a new way of living for you. A new Christianity. The original, Lord. We want to be OGs. We don't want to be the fake that is around. We want to be the originals. Help us, Lord. We say yes to you. Come and have your way. Touch every life right now. Touch every heart right now, Lord. Remove fear. Remove fear. Remove anxiety. Transform. Bring your transformation. As you began on the day of Pentecost, as you poured out your Spirit, would you pour out your Spirit over our hearts and begin transformation of the way we think, the way we live, the things we value. Let us know you will never leave us out to dry, because you said, seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and everything you need will be given unto you. That's the good Father you are. That's the good Father you are. And therefore, Lord, we want to remove our eyes from our goals which have become bigger than you. We want to remove our eyes from the problems that have got bigger than you. From either spectrum, we choose to turn our eyes back onto you. Back onto you, Jesus. Not on the problems, not to our goals of our prosperity, but back on you, Jesus. Back on you. Back on you. Give us fresh vision of this good Father. Fresh vision of good Father. So we are not victims. We are not victims. But we be disciples that says we are covenant people. We are covenant children of God. That's who we are. Come, Holy Spirit. Have your way, I pray. I pray, Father, even as we leave, Lord, I pray we would wear what you have said this morning to us. That I won't remove it when I leave this door. That your word would, Lord, I would wear it through the week. So wherever I am, that what we heard about from your word, Lord, not my opinions, not my interpretations, but what your word said, Lord, may we wear your word throughout this week. So we can be your disciples. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Jesus. Amen.